I came back from our trip, I had lost my home and job because my husband knew about my fling. Hey Reddit, I really need to get this off my chest as something incredibly bizarre and unexpected happened to me recently, and I really don't know how to process it. It's made worse by the fact that it was all my fault. I caused the whole thing. My husband heard me talking about my affair partner in my sleep and pretended as if he didn't know, just so he could get revenge on me. I apologize in advance if this might sound a bit disorganized or a bit too long, as I'm still trying to make sense of my thoughts, and I'm also using this post as a place to express my feelings. For a bit of context, my name is Anita and my husband's name is Ken. We've been together for about 8 years, married for about 2. We don't have any kids as we were planning on having a few more years into our marriage. I am 30 years old and my husband is 29 and we met in college. Things were pretty great between us. We had good jobs right out of college because my husband's dad owned a successful company. It was a fantastic start to our careers and we were both grateful for the opportunities. My husband's love language was acts of service and he excelled at it. He took on about 70% of the household chores despite his busy schedule and still contributed around 60% of the bills. He was always helpful and he made sure everything around the house ran smoothly. What made our relationship even more special was how romantic and thoughtful my husband was. He planned surprise date nights, romantic dinner dates, movie nights at home, and many other thoughtful gestures. He always took the initiative in our relationship and he always made me feel cherished and loved. However, we did have our differences, especially when it came to finances. My husband was a saver and believed in making investments and taking calculated risks. On the other hand, I was more of a spender. I believed in enjoying life in the moment and not worrying too much about the future. This clash of perspectives led to a disagreement about having a joint account. I wanted one because I saw it as a symbol of unity in our marriage, but my husband was very hesitant. He was concerned that I would spend recklessly, depleting our savings. After some discussions and disagreements, I eventually relented and decided to respect my husband's concerns and decisions regarding our finances. Despite this difference, our relationship was strong, and we worked well together in most aspects of our lives. Our sex life was another area where we faced ongoing challenges, at least from my perspective. It's not that it was bad. In fact, it was quite good. However, it didn't match up to my desires and expectations. In simpler terms, it just didn't always hit the spot for me. One major issue was our differing libidos. I had a much higher sex drive than my husband. This often meant that when I was in the mood, he wasn't, and vice versa. When he did try to engage despite not being fully into it, it wasn't as fulfilling for me. He was so careful and gentle that it didn't quite scratch the itch, if you know what I mean. Another aspect was the style of intimacy. Like I think I've mentioned before, my husband was gentle, soft, and very considerate during sex. Don't get me wrong, that's sweet and all, but it left me feeling a bit unsatisfied at times as it didn't align with what I desired. I preferred a more passionate and rough approach, and that was something my husband was very hesitant about. He was always cautious and always concerned about causing any discomfort or harm. It was like we were speaking different languages in the bedroom, and of course it led to some frustrations and tensions between us. Despite those bumps in the road, our relationship was solid. We had a lot of good moments together, and we enjoyed each other's company and supported each other through thick and thin. Ken was my rock. He was always there when I needed him, and I did my best to be there for him too. We shared a lot of interests and hobbies like hiking on weekends, trying out new restaurants, and even binge watching our favorite TV shows. These moments created a very strong bond between us, and I cherished them deeply. Ken's dedication to our relationship was admirable. He never hesitated to go the extra mile to make me happy, whether it was planning surprise date nights, cooking my favorite meals, or simply being a listening ear after a long day at work. His love for me was undeniable, and despite our differences, he made it work. He was a source of joy and comfort in my life. Then Vince came into the mix. He was the latest addition to the company, and as Vince settled into his role at the company, we started talking more often. He had this way of asking questions that didn't bug me, unlike some others who could be a bit pushy. Vince was just genuinely curious and friendly, and that made it easy to chat with him. Slowly, I found myself liking Vince not just as a colleague, but as a friend. He was always so eager to learn and improve, which I found really cool. Our chats started feeling more personal, and I enjoyed spending time with him. There was definitely a connection between us, something that went beyond work banter. We had things in common and got along well, but I knew I had to be careful. I loved my husband and didn't want to mess things up. As I got closer to Vince, I realized how much I was lonely and had craved a deep connection. Sure, I had work buddies, but Vince was different. He became someone I could truly open up to. It felt like we clicked instantly, like we'd been pals forever, even though we'd only known each other a short while. The thing is, I couldn't ignore the spark I felt for Vince. It started innocently enough, just a harmless crush. But as we hung out more, both at work and in our chats outside of work, that crush turned into something stronger. I found myself eagerly waiting for his messages, constantly checking my phone in hopes of hearing from him. Ken, my husband, noticed the change. He didn't say much, just gave me these curious and puzzled looks when I'd grab my phone eagerly. I could tell he was puzzled by the sudden shift in my focus. And when he found out I changed my phone password, even though he didn't say it outright, I could sense his worry. But in my mind, it was just a friendship, nothing more. I didn't want to risk what I had with Vince, that is my friendship with him, over a silly crush. As more time went on, Vince and I started hanging out more often outside of work. It began with simple things like grabbing lunch together or meeting up for a coffee after work. These outings gradually became a regular occurrence, and I found myself enjoying his company more and more. Our conversations weren't just about work anymore. We flirted, got into personal topics, shared our thoughts on life, relationships, and everything in between. Vince was a great listener, and I felt comfortable opening up to him in ways I hadn't with anyone else. Our friendship felt refreshing, like a breath of fresh air amidst the routine of daily life. I appreciated having someone outside of my marriage to connect with on a deeper level. Vince brought a sense of excitement and companionship that I had been missing. Despite our growing closeness, I still somehow convinced myself that our relationship was purely platonic. I ignored the subtle hints and gestures that hinted at something more, and chose to see them as friendly interactions. As I grew closer to Vince, I naturally drifted apart from my husband. It wasn't something I planned, it just happened because of how much I enjoyed spending time with Vince. Before Vince, my husband was my main focus. He wasn't just my partner, he was my best friend too. But as Vince became more and more important to me, my attention shifted. Suddenly, my husband wasn't the only person I thought about all the time. I felt torn between staying loyal to my husband and nurturing my new friendship with Vince. I wanted to make things work with my husband, but I also didn't want to lose Vince, who had become such a significant part of my life. This inner conflict led to a noticeable distance between my husband and me. Our convos became routine, and it lacked the excitement and connection I felt with Vince. As a result of that, I found myself enjoying my conversations with Vince more and always eagerly looking forward to moments with Vince. I cherished our talks and shared experiences. Deep down, I knew my feelings for Vince were growing stronger every day. It became increasingly challenging to juggle my emotions and responsibilities, especially as my bond with Vince deepened. As I hung out more with Vince, we clicked even better, and I naturally continued to pull away from my husband. Vince had this infectious energy that just lit up every room he entered. Being around him felt like a breath of fresh air compared to the routine of my marriage. He was so full of life and always eager to try new things, which I found really exciting. One of the things that drew me to Vince was his youthful spirit. He was adventurous and always up for a good time, unlike my husband, who was more settled and focused on stability. Vince brought this thrill and spontaneity into my life that I hadn't experienced in a while. Our hangouts became more frequent, and eventually we started chilling at Vince's place. It was a cozy little spot, and since he lived solo and wasn't tied down romantically, it was just us most of the time. Being in that relaxed setting allowed our friendship to deepen into something more meaningful. I found myself opening up to Vince in ways I hadn't with anyone else. We shared personal stories, dreams, and goals. There was this understanding and connection between us that felt incredibly real. But as my bond with Vince grew stronger, I couldn't shake off the growing distance between my husband and me. Our talks became strained, and I couldn't help but compare the excitement and passion I felt with Vince against the comfortable but somewhat dull routine of my marriage. Well, as you guys might have already guessed, I eventually found myself in a situation I never thought I'd be in. It all started innocently enough. We were watching movies at Vince's place. We had this routine of watching our favorite films, chatting, and just enjoying each other's company. But that day, something shifted. We were lounging on the couch, the movie was playing in the background, when I leaned in and kissed him. It was impulsive, but I was just so attracted to Vince. Vince was obviously shocked and taken aback at first, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he responded, and that's when everything changed. The kisses turned into something more. We then headed to the bedroom, and before I knew it, I had crossed a line that I never thought I would. Of course, I immediately felt guilty after that, but I also felt excited and fulfilled. I had enjoyed it so much. It was like I had unlocked a part of myself that had been dormant for so long. The sex with Vince was different from anything I had experienced with my husband. It was rough, intense, and it fulfilled a craving I didn't even realize I had. I have always yearned for that spark, that wild connection that made my heart race and my senses come alive. And with Vince, I found it. I knew I was betraying my husband. I knew I was breaking the vows we had made to each other. But in those moments, it was hard to think about anything else but the raw desire and satisfaction I was experiencing. Despite the guilt, I couldn't deny that I felt alive in a way I hadn't in a long time. Vince awakened something in me, something wild and untamed, something I had buried deep inside. That was how I got caught up in this wild affair with Vince, and it felt like I was hooked on something addictive. The sex were filled with this crazy, intense passion that I couldn't resist. It was like stepping into a whole new world where my usual worries and responsibilities melted away, and all that mattered was the rush of being with him. I'd make up excuses to my husband, saying I needed to stay late at work, just so I could sneak off and be with Vince. Even though deep down I knew it was all wrong. But in those moments with Vince, none of that seemed to matter. I wrestled with guilt every time I saw my husband's face, knowing I was betraying him. But the pull of the affair was too strong to resist. As my affair with Vince went on, it got harder for my husband to catch on. He trusted me a lot and never snooped through my phone or checked up on me, even when I slipped up and left messages unerased. It was like I had a free pass to do as I pleased. Vince and I were pros at playing it cool at work. We kept our professional masks on so well that no one suspected a thing. If you saw us at work, you'd never guess we were secretly involved. Vince's behavior took a nosedive into controlling territory. He became possessive and controlling. He started acting like he owned me, forgetting our agreement to keep things discreet at work. It got annoying and kind of scary. We had one golden rule, which was to avoid anything that could raise suspicion or expose us in our professional environment. But Vince disregarded this rule entirely. He began dictating what I should wear, going as far as to command me not to wear my wedding ring. His demands were becoming invasive and disrespectful, especially considering that I was his senior at work. Before our affair, Vince had been friendly and informal, which was fine since we were friends. However, after our affair started, his behavior became more rude and disrespectful. What really got under my skin was his disrespect toward my husband. He'd make snide remarks, implying my husband couldn't satisfy me, which is why I was with him. It was hurtful and completely out of line. Vince was not only messing with professional boundaries, but also disrespecting me and my marriage. I started thinking about dumping Vince. He was acting worse and worse, and I didn't want him dragging me down with him. We had a good thing going for a while, but now it was turning sour. However, fate had other plans for me, and I got caught before I could end things with Vince. And let me tell you, it was in the worst way possible, talking in my sleep. With all the stress Vince was causing me, I started sleep talking again. It's something I used to do more when I was younger. This time, though, I must have let slip about my affair. My husband overheard it all. Instead of calling me out right then and there, he snooped through my phone and confirmed his suspicions. It was a humiliating way to get caught, and I feel like it was karma was hitting me hard for my actions. My husband then suggested we go on a little trip for the weekend. I wasn't thrilled about that, and I was reluctant because it means I wouldn't be able to see Vince for that weekend. So at first I said no, but my husband insisted on the trip. He promised it would be short, just a weekend getaway. So reluctantly, I agreed. My husband said he would rent us an Airbnb, and that sounded like a welcome change. It had been ages since my husband and I did something just for us. So despite the guilt, I looked forward to spending quality time with him. Part of me was also a bit relieved, as this gave me a break from Vince's possessiveness. He'd been getting on my nerves, and I needed space from his demands. I told Vince about the trip, and of course he wasn't happy. But with the plans already made, there wasn't much he could do. The weekend rolled by and we headed out. After arriving at the Airbnb, the first day of our trip was rather uneventful. We simply wandered around, taking in the sights and exploring the area. It felt strange being away from home, but despite that, I tried to enjoy the change of scenery and the chance to spend some quality time with my husband, even if I felt a bit uneasy. That evening, we had a quiet dinner at a local restaurant. The atmosphere was pleasant, and my husband seemed determined to make the most of our time together. He was being attentive and affectionate, which only made me feel more guilty about my affair with Vince. It was like a constant shadow hanging over me, reminding me of the betrayal I was committing. As the night wore on, we returned to our Airbnb. My husband suggested watching a movie together, something we used to do often before things started falling apart between us. It felt like he was trying to recapture the closeness we once had, and it made me feel a mixture of nostalgia and sadness. We cuddled on the couch, but my mind kept wandering to Vince and the excitement I felt when I was with him. The next day, we planned to do some sightseeing and visit a nearby beach. My husband was eager to make the most of our time away, and I tried to push aside my guilt and be present in the moment. However, every time my phone buzzed with a message, I couldn't help but wonder if it was from Vince. The thought made me anxious and distracted throughout the day, even as we enjoyed the activities my husband had planned. By the time evening rolled around, I was exhausted both physically and emotionally. The weight of my actions felt heavier than ever. I felt so guilty and wanted to come clean. I regretted everything. I woke up on Monday morning expecting to find my husband still there, but the Airbnb was eerily empty. Initially, I tried to stay calm, thinking maybe he had gone out for a quick errand. I called him several times, but each attempt went unanswered. As minutes ticked by, my anxiety grew. I decided to pack our bags since we were leaving that morning. I assumed he'd be back soon, but as I gathered our things, I realized his belongings were missing. Panic started to set in as I dialed his number repeatedly. I was desperate for an explanation. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he answered. My relief was short-lived as he unleashed his fury. He was calm but firm, telling me he had left and that I should find my own way back home. Of course, I was confused, so I asked him why he would do something like that. He then accused me of being ungrateful and dishonest, saying that our time at the Airbnb was his way of giving me a chance to confess. He made it clear he knew what I had been doing with Vince. He informed me that my belongings had been packed and sent to my parents' house. There was no room for negotiation or reconciliation. He told me to head straight to my parents' place, not to our home. Then the call ended abruptly before I could even defend myself. I hailed an Uber to get to my parents' place because I knew my husband wasn't messing around. When I arrived, it was like a reality check smacked me in the face. My parents were fuming. They asked why I'd messed things up with my husband like that. They pointed to the pile of my stuff that his friends had dumped there. Their disappointment cut deep, but I was too drained to argue or explain. It feels like I'm living in some crazy drama and I just want it all to stop. I know I can't lean on my parents forever. They made it clear I had to sort things out with my husband. I feel utterly lost. I'm reaching out for any tips or advice on how to patch up this mess. Any real help or insights would mean the world right now. Update. Hey Reddit, it's me again, the one you've labeled as the cheater. I came here seeking some advice and support, but instead I've been met with a lot of insults and disrespect. Thanks for nothing, Reddit. To clear up some common misconceptions, many of you have accused me of talking about Vince like I'm in love with him. That couldn't be further from the truth. I don't love Vince. I love my husband, and all I want is to mend things with him. Vince was just a passionate fling that happened. Yes, I enjoyed it, but love? That's a stretch. I understand that what I did was wrong, and I'm not trying to justify it. But the constant name-calling and insults are not helpful. If you don't have anything constructive to say, please refrain from commenting. Let's keep this space respectful and focused on finding solutions, not tearing each other down. Update. Hey Reddit, I wish I could bring you some positive news, but unfortunately there's no happy ending yet. Many of you are saying I should give up, that my husband won't forgive me, but I believe he will. It's just a matter of time. To address some questions, we are in touch, although our communication is minimal. He shared a few details with me because I've been messaging and pleading with him. I didn't go to work today because I'm unsure if I still have a job. Given his position in the company, I might be facing termination, but I haven't received any confirmation yet. I haven't responded to his message yet, and I'm not sure if he's aware of everything that's going on. My husband is adamant about wanting a divorce, and he's not answering questions about my job status or if Vince is still around. It's a very challenging and uncertain time, and I'm trying to navigate through it the best I can. Update. Hey Reddit, it's me again, the cheater. I know I'll probably face a lot of criticism for what I did, but I wanted to share an update. I decided to go back to work today since I hadn't heard anything official. Upon arriving, I realized that it was indeed my last day at the company. That explains why Vince stopped texting me. He was terminated too. I never responded to his last message during our vacation, and he sent a few more afterward. After that, the messages stopped, so I guess he's come to terms with why I didn't reply. On top of that, I was terminated when I arrived, but I'll receive 2 weeks' pay, which isn't much, but will help for a bit. I attempted to talk to my husband, but he wasn't very receptive. He kept telling me to stop acting foolishly and that we're definitely heading for a divorce. He urged me to take a moment to think, suggesting that if I had done so earlier, I wouldn't be in this situation. He asked if I would forgive him if he cheated, to which I honestly said no. Then he questioned why I expected forgiveness for my actions. Eventually, he escorted me out, and although I resisted a bit, I made sure to tidy up my workspace and lack my stuff before leaving. So it's official, we're getting divorced. I know many of you may want to criticize me, but that's okay. At least I have 2 weeks' pay to help me through this rough time. Update. Hey Reddit, it's me again, the cheater. I know many of you were waiting for an update on when the divorce would be official, so here it is. You can go ahead and celebrate with my husband. The divorce is done. It's been a tough few months and I've been avoiding posting this update, but I felt I owed it to those who were kind to me despite my mistakes. The divorce process was straightforward. The house and cars were all in my husband's name, and he had been making payments on them for years, so I had no claim to them. We didn't have children, so there was no child support involved. We were both working, and he even helped me secure a good job with decent pay, so there were no alimony issues either. Plus, we had signed a prenup before getting married, which I didn't mention in the main post. And of course, the fact that I cheated was a significant factor in the divorce proceedings. So in the end, my husband walked away with everything, which was rightfully his. I don't have any assets to claim, so there was nothing for me to keep. It's a harsh reality, but that's how it goes sometimes. The criticism I received during this time was intense, and I really struggled with it. I went through a period of self-hate, and while I'm still dealing with it, it's not as consuming anymore. I'm moving on from this chapter now, and I'll probably never update again after this. I know some of you won't miss me, and that's okay. I'm moving on, and I hope everyone finds peace in their own way. This woman thought she could embarrass me and get away with it. I showed her who was the real madman in our relationship. Imagine my so-called wife trying to embarrass me in front of big names in the sports industry, and she brought her affair to link him up with these men. Like she had no shame. She didn't know I had been unto her. She thought she could destroy my career in the middle of a corporate party. Women. You give them an inch and they want to destroy you with it. I had known my wife was having an affair with another man while she was married to me. I just hadn't expected her to be so blatant about it and throw it in my face. She had thought I wouldn't be able to do anything. I had made this woman, and then she had raised her middle finger to me. This is why I would always advise husbands to watch their wives. Don't put them in way above their heads. That was what I had done to this woman, and she had thought she had the best of me. LOL. I showed her maybe I had gone a little too extreme, but I had to remind her of her little beginnings and see how she survived with me. The audacity of these beings. Can you imagine the humiliation I went through seeing my wife sell her lover to my clients and front him like her brother while I was standing there dumbstruck? Then they couldn't even keep it in their pants. They went to go and rump themselves up in her office, and one idiot had caught them. I shouldn't have invited her to the party. Hell, I shouldn't have given her a leeway into my career field. I should have curbed it all when I found out about the affair and what she was doing, storing away money to leave me. I wanted to wait until after the party, and then I would throw the divorce papers in her face and then make sure I did something worthwhile to make her regret going against me. But she had run one up on me, and I was angry. I was livid. Let me tell you all what happened at the party. First off, she ditched me. My ex-wife worked as a junior executive in our sports firm. She wasn't supposed to be at the party. It was for senior executives, and she was just a team leader for one small team in the firm. She didn't mingle with the higher-ups, but I had invited her for the party because she was my wife, and she had begged me to come. Literally, it was all my wife of 5 years, now ex, had begged for as we were together in the past months before our divorce finalized 2 weeks ago. She knew about the party and wanted to go amongst her colleagues because it would make her look like she had more connection than them. Or that was what I had thought. My ex-wife was like a peacock. She loved having bragging rights like it was her lifeline. I should have treated that as the red flag that it was, but I had just overlooked it because I loved my woman to show off. The amount of begging was incessant. She didn't stop, and it was becoming annoying, so I had procured her a ticket to our office corporate party that was meant for senior executives and the athletes we managed and their families. This was my first mistake. The day of the party came, and my wife took off to go get her nails and whatever it was done. Had I known she was cheating on me? Yes, I had. I had a private investigator trail her movement, but I had called him off after every evidence he gathered pointed to what I had known to my face. I had already known what I was going to do after the PA. Had I expected her to be stupid and flaunt said affair in my face and colleagues? No, I hadn't. Like I said, I was going to divorce her after the party at work. Well, it was time for the party, and my ex-wife was nowhere to be found. I tried her cell and every available method to reach her, but to no avail. I had even called her friend, who was almost inseparable from her, after I had sworn I would have nothing to do with her. I would get to the why later. I called the friend, and that one said she had no idea where my ex-wife was. I cut the call on the witch because she was useless to me. My ex-wife was ditching me, so I had to go without her. After the party, I would look for her. I don't think you all understand the importance of this party to me. It was the best thing to propel my career as an athlete manager forward. I had a client to pitch to the big guns, and if they accepted my client, I was going to be made. I didn't want anything to go wrong. Heck, that was why I had invited my ex-wife in the first place, so it would seem like I was a family man. Everyone loved a family man, so I had thought that would score me an extra few points in their books. I really didn't want anything to go wrong, but everything went as wrong as I could have never believed possible. I had felt like the ground should swallow me when my ex-wife showed up with her lover on her arm. I had gotten to the party and started making rounds greeting top men in the game. Like when I tell you this was a hightail event. I don't know how the owner of my firm had managed to pull some big men in sports to the event. I had expected something, but not something as huge as how that party was, and it had bombed in my face because I had given that stupid woman an inch. I'm not talking big like Steph Curry or James. I would have fainted if my ex-wife had embarrassed me at an event with them in it. I can't mention the names of the managers and athletes at our corporate party because of privacy, and I could be tracked and sued, so I would just let you all imagine the high-end people that were there. I was making rounds when this woman came in from the front of the hall looking all glammed up and the man on her arm. I was livid, but I had to maintain composure because this was a gathering of influential people, so I had to keep cool and not cause a scene. She strolled in like she owned the place, and she and her lover were matching. Imagine that tall order of audacity. She was dishing and serving it. I could only close my mouth in shock, and the first thing that had come to mind when I saw her was how she had gotten an extra ticket for her lover to get in with her. I was shocked. Not only had she ditched me and come with someone who wasn't me, the witch had used me to get an extra ticket for her affair. I had felt so fooled. I had felt like the ground should open and swallow me. Then the witch sighted me and she withdrew back in shock. I had no idea what she had been thinking. That I wouldn't show up at the party? That was so foolish for her. But I had been there and she was shocked to see me there. Now that I'm replaying all these things in my head, it was so laughable, really. She had actually been shocked to see me at a party I had invited her for and decided to play it off in the most ridiculous way possible. My ex-wife walked up to me and became all cuddly sweet, and I just couldn't do anything but look in astonishment. Then she introduced the man on her arms as her brother. Her brother. If she had said cousin, I could have given her the lie. If she had said adopted brother, I would have applauded the lie. But she said he was her blood relative, and they looked nothing alike. I greeted the young man out of courtesy because I was talking to an important guest, and when I wanted to strike in and introduce the athlete I was managing, my ex-wife inserted herself and introduced her brother. Sorry, her affair. Like she was rubbing it in my face and there was nothing I could do about it. She knew there was nothing about it. My ex-wife went on to sing high praises of said brother while still holding his arm. She couldn't even have the decency to pretend like I was there. She thought she had little power. The guest I had been talking to was intrigued by ex-wife's lover's skills and handed her his card, which I quickly collected and tried to salvage the situation. Did you think I was going to let the witch run the reins? Not on my watch. I took the card and told the man that I was going to contact him for my own client. He smiled and walked away, and my ex-wife looked at me and then tried to formally introduce her brother to me, like as if I was still in diapers and didn't know what was actually going on here. Then I recall I said something along the lines of, "So you're sleeping with your brother now," and the shock on her face was epic. Women are so dumb. She thought she had been so sleek with her sneaking around behind my back. I had read some stories on this platform and thought there was no way the shit was real. In my head, I was like, ain't no way women were this delusional and men were this gullible, but it had happened to me. And I believe I was the most gullible MF of them all. I left where she was standing shocked and moved around the party. In my head, I was going to throw her things out of my house immediately I was done here. The witch had done enough damage. She wanted to take my hard work from me. I thought she was done embarrassing me. Nope, my ex-wife just had to be caught doing her lover in her office. I was about to leave the party when I received a notification and a video came on with my ex-wife sleeping with her in her office. They were literally slumming it down. My ex-wife had never shown off those moves when she was with me, but apparently her lover had better game, LOL. I wasn't even mad at that. I was mad at the fact that her face could clearly be seen and everyone knew she was married to me because she had flexed my name at work whenever she wanted something and wasn't getting her way. So people at the office knew she was affiliated with me and she had gone on to do that. Her lover's face wasn't showing in the video, so people had thought it was me with her in her office doing those things. Meanwhile, I had been watching the video with them. She was on a path to destroy my career. I had to do something. I had to go round the party. At least those left. I had to show my face to the people remaining so they knew it wasn't me with her. When I was done making rounds, I left to go back to the house. I was on a revenge path. I knew the important documents she had that were on her laptop. I deleted her backup files. Then I filled the tub with water and then I drowned it. I grabbed her belongings and took the property document that her father had left to her in his will, and then I set it on fire. She had tried to damage my life. I wanted to see how she was going to rise from the ashes with everything I was going to burn. I grabbed her clothes, the one she had stuffed in her box. It looked like she was planning to run away, or move away. I had no idea what she wanted to do. I took it and threw it, and I set it all on fire. She wasn't going to get away with trying to disgrace me in front of everyone. Now that I think about it, she had done it on purpose. Took her lover to her office and had sex with him and made it look like it was me so I would get fired. She knew that there was a strict no fraternizing with workers on the office premises rule, and she had done that knowing fully well she was quitting the job and planning to run away, and I was the one that was going to face the repercussions alone. I don't know what I had done to deserve this wickedness that the witch had thought to deal me with. I admit I hadn't been the best husband, and we quarreled almost half the time we were together. I just hadn't thought that she hated me to this degree. Well, she wanted to show me crazy. I showed her how crazy I could be, and I was the best at it. It was as the fire was ebbing that my ex-wife came home, and I got to witness how shocked she was at how crazy I could get. And she had the gall to come back with her lover in tow. I punched him and stormed inside my house. My ex-wife had been ranting below, and one of my neighbors called the police, so she had to leave. It was great watching her being escorted away by the police. I wished I had sprung up the police on her. The next day, I told my lawyers to prepare divorce papers, and this woman thought she was so smart and tried to get me arrested. I destroyed her. I just realized I have just been ranting and hadn't given a backstory on how I had met the woman that had wanted to ruin my life. I won't go into the fake names BS. I'm not divulging my name because it doesn't make sense to do all that to me. I had met my wife on a dating app. Probably hadn't been my best idea. I can't remember the name of the app exactly, but it was one of the most popular ones. We had both swiped right on our pictures, and I had gone on 3 dates with her, and she had seemed lovely and bearable. I remember she was done with college and was working as a personal assistant to her aunt or something like that. I can't recall the details of our meeting. She was pretty, and I liked her despite my friends' warnings, and I decided to ask her to be my girlfriend. I dated her for about a year, and I needed to present a married man front to get to the level I wanted to attain in my field, so I had asked her to marry me. I hadn't listened to my friends when they were warning me that it wasn't wise to marry someone I just knew for about a year, but people were marrying someone they had just met in 3 days. I had paid them no mind and had a small wedding with my wife, or my ex-wife as it is now. We had a small wedding and she wasn't pleased. She wanted a big wedding. I asked her what she wanted a big wedding for. It wasn't like she was inviting many people from her side, just her friends. Her family wasn't coming to the wedding. I didn't know the main cause, but I recall they'd had a fight almost 2 weeks before our wedding, and they had said she could get married without their blessings. I hadn't even looked into it because I had been too engrossed in wanting to get married and get the position at my office. I couldn't care less what her family thought of me. We wedded, and I had taken her on a trip to Zanzibar for our honeymoon for 2 weeks before I dived into work when we got back. It was something, wasn't it? I began building and trying to impress my bosses and those above me in status. She had served the purpose of why I had married her, and I didn't know what to do with her again. Trust me, I tried. I hadn't loved her when we got married. I had thought I would grow to love her. My friends had said so. I had hoped that I was definitely going to grow to love her. I liked her. But then work took over, and I was too busy selling my clients to top blokes that I neglected my wife. Time flew, and it was our 5-year wedding anniversary. This was when I found out that she was cheating on me. Well, not exactly. I had started seeing signs and then decided to hit up a private investigator. What had been the signs? My ex-wife had called me another name while we were having our anniversary dinner at home. I was that paranoid. And my friend had just found out his wife was doing the same thing to him, and they were getting couples therapy. So when my ex-wife called me another man's name, I knew something was going on behind my back. It was like I had expected it. I had asked her who the person was, and then she had said it was her friend's baby's name she had called me. She'd had a little mix-up in her head and called me her friend's child's name. My ex-wife was a terrible liar. Anyway, that had set me on high alert because I didn't want to look stupid. I laughed away the uncomfortable moment, and she thought I had forgotten about it. I hired the PI and got feedback within 2 weeks, and I found out she was having an affair. After I had vouched for her and submitted her name for her to get employed in my firm. I should never have given her that leverage, but her aunt's firm had closed up because said aunt had traveled to the UK, and she couldn't just stay idle and needed something to do. This was one of the times I had been a good husband and had gone out of my way to put her needs first. It wasn't every time bags and jewelry. I thought I was doing something that was impactful in her life. I didn't know I was giving her leverage to make me regret doing that. All these happened before I found out she was having an affair with another man. My pie showed me everything I needed to go and get a divorce like every normal person, but I got informed of the party and thought I could win her back with gifts. I was grasping for straws and tried to win her back through material things instead of dumping her ass at the first red light my PI had given me. I bought my ex-wife gifts and it backfired. I was still watching her through the PI and she was still going to see him. When I knew I was being played for a fool was when my PI had reported back to me that he had seen her coming out of a pawn shop with huge wads of cash, and then she had stopped by her affairs house. I should have divorced her then. I should have just gotten it over with and had her out of my life when she started lying to my face about her whereabouts. This was when I had gotten into an issue with her friend. I had tried to call my wife and she wasn't picking up my calls, so I had called her friend. Her friend had picked up and said that my ex-wife wasn't with her, and then she had gone ahead to tell me that I should stop being a, pardon my bad language, pussy-whipped jerk and allow my wife to enjoy some freedom. My ex-wife had been gone over the weekend and didn't bother to inform me of her whereabouts. I called the friend all sorts of names and she blocked my number. My ex-wife came back the next day and tried to smooth things over with me. She lied that she had been with her friend and they had gone for a spa day, but in the middle of it she had to go and fix a work emergency, so she had left and had forgot to charge her phone. Like she had given me a half-faced lie and expected me to believe it. But I hadn't said anything. I had kept silent, thinking she would come to her senses while I was preparing for our office party and repping my clients. A month till the party, my ex-wife had come up and said she needed my signature to use and open an account with my bank. She had come at the perfect time. When I was stressed about a client I was repping and was trying to arrange his files. I had signed the papers she wanted and she had used it to open a joint account. And she had somehow convinced my account manager, who had been a friend of the family, to move my money into the joint account, all because she had seen my signature on a form. I was wondering how she had done it. She must have had some help because I didn't think my wife was capable of being that smart. But the joint account, it didn't exist, had just been a front, and she was actually siphoning money from my account to a secret account. I would have been none the wiser if not for the PI I had hired that had told me of the recent developments. She had wanted to steal my hard-earned money from right underneath my nose, and I had been gullible enough to not know what was going on. I had been so focused on work that I didn't even know what was happening around me. My PI told me and I called my account manager and started shouting at her, then they tried to retrieve the money. Luckily they could, and I found out that this woman had a hidden account and it had a huge amount of money. She wanted to add my own money to the list of people she had scammed. And when she had gotten back after work, she had tried to act innocent and cute, telling me about her day and the likes, like as if I didn't know the fraud she had committed. I really don't know how I had been calm through the whole thing. It was so surprising that I hadn't kicked her out right there and then. But I had an ultimate goal in my mind. I was going to be free of her after the office party, and I signed the contract deal that was going to change my life. I kept quiet and acted innocent with her. Then the party came, and it all backfired in my face. I should have had the upper hand and sent her away, but she had tried to show that she was smarter than me. I have brought you guys up to speed on how the party went and how she tried to embarrass me. I was done. She had messed with me, tried to take away my money, and I drew the line at my career. No one messed with my career and went scot-free. I was a determined man when it came to achieving my goals, and I wanted to go far in my career. Ever since I realized I would never be handpicked in the game, I channeled my talents into becoming the person that gets athletes their dreams in their required sports. I would rather die than see someone try to ruin it, so I got back at my wife. I remember that she was trying to sign a major deal, and I had made sure that her laptop was spoilt beyond repair. She was going to go through a lot before she gained access to the things she used to have. I sent the divorce papers through my lawyers, and then my lawyers told me she wouldn't sign unless I met with my ex-wife. I disagreed, and then she called the police on me because I had burnt her things. That was such a low blow for her because I submitted all the evidence of illegal fund movement to her account. The questioning turned her, and I was set free. She had confronted me outside the station that all she had wanted from me was attention, and if I had just given her a little attention, she wouldn't have found another man. That was the dumbest excuse if I had ever heard one. Well, it was by in that chapter, and I was so glad I had come out unscathed. I want to tell you guys on this platform to be aware of women who are out to take everything from you and leave you in ruins. Luckily, nothing happened to my career. I still got the contract for the client under me and got made in my career. The video got deleted and no one traced it to me. As for my ex-wife, once she had signed the divorce papers, I was done with her. I blocked her number and everything connected to her. I would have loved to see how much she was suffering trying to salvage what was left of her life. But I couldn't be bothered. I moved on from that chapter. Redditors, I hope you guys learn from my experience and vet the woman you want to get married to carefully. I had been carried away by my career and had chosen someone who was as evil as they came. I hope no one gets to pass through what I passed through because some people may not have been as sharp as me to notice the subtle signs of cheating. Well, my life is taking a great path now. Doubt I'm going to get married anytime soon.